Brothers and sisters, may the peace of the Lord and his goodness overflow abundantly in your hearts on this, the fourth Sunday of Lent. Today's gospel is the most familiar of parables, the most heart-wrenching parable. Uh, it leaves me on an emotional high, uh, but when the tears come, it reduces me to want to run to confession, to tell you the truth, and to have a moment or two in review of times past, because it's all about the prodigal son. It's all about the father's uh, dealings with his boys, and he deals mercifully, equally, justly, compassionately, even when an insult is hurled at him by the older son and the younger son's living arrangements when he leaves the home. It's something that every parent can experience should the child want to uh, feel rebellion and to do something about it. And then hopefully, and they come back to their brains and return home. That's the gist. You know that story. Let me fill it in a bit more. This is a story that brings us who listen to it to a space where God and the soul are in conversation. That's what I meant. We need that time to enter into this, and this is ourselves. We are in this story. Okay, so God and the soul. Okay, must come together in conversation, or they will be separated from one another, and that's something that the Lenten season is asking us not to experience this kind of separation. But of course, every human situation we find ourselves in is difficult for everybody, and this story has something difficult to say to us. Uh, the father in the story, the man has two sons. The younger son insults his father by asking for his share of the inheritance. But instead of responding with offended honor, the father gives everything he has, keeping nothing for himself. He gives his property to both of his sons, dividing it equally. On one level, this is a story about family relationships, and it's not meant to be a social commentary. The father represents the self-giving spiritual reality of God. The two sons, two predicaments in which people find themselves. The younger son will be lost in sin, the older son lost in self-righteousness. Both are lost. First, the mindset of the younger son. He finds himself in a dehumanizing living situation. What little life he takes with him is quickly dissipated. It simply dissolves, having no source to refresh it. It leads to emptiness, but an empty stomach concocts all kinds of plans. And so he turns and moves towards the Father. That's all he needs to do. And he comes home. The house he knows is the house of his Father. There, the hired hands are eating well. And so he prepares and practices a script to get back into the house of food, a script that acknowledges his sin, his straying from the source of life. But he obsesses on his mistake. He allows it to hold him tighter and tighter. His sin now has become his identity. He's no longer son, he's a sinner. The father shows no sign of holding on to the son's mistake, and the son is not able to let it go. We see now in the person of the Father divine love meeting us more than halfway. Grace is proactive energy that seeks whoever is willing to be found. That's why it is written by theologians, depart from evil and do good, turn wholly from evil, do not brood in its way, and do good. Having done wrong, balance it by doing right. It would seem to be required if forgiveness is ever going to be integrated into a person's life. But this is difficult to do. Letting go of sin is different than repressing the memory of wrongdoing. When wrongdoing is repressed, it sits there and it waits. Does it burn a hole in the soul? Sure it does. When it reappears, it undercuts the capacity for joy. I believe that letting go of past sins, we can remember them, yes, but we do not have to identify with them. While he was still far off, his father saw him. The father has been sitting on the front porch, keeping vigil, waiting, watching. At the sight of his son, the father, with heartfelt compassion, covers the distance between them. This compassion moves him so completely that he runs, he embraces, he kisses. Such actions of overwhelming love and reconciliation. Though we still have a standoff, we have a sullen sinner and a wildly joyous father. The father does not engage his son, who would be a hired hand. Instead, he speaks to the slaves about how to treat his son. He is to be visibly reinstated according to the father's wishes, with wardrobe and banquet, a wholehearted welcome. Because my son was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, and now he is found. This is all the Father cares about. Celebration is the only appropriate response. Now his elder son was out in the field. The older son is a worker. He does not come into the house of his father from famine, but from laboring in the fields. He is not accustomed or even attracted to the sound of music and dancing. He sees himself as self-righteous. His heart cannot stay focused on the abundance of God and the goodness of creation. He is suspicious. And when he finds out what's going on, he is angry. Empty joy, empty gladness, his refusal to go inside and join the celebration. Such an insult. But the father who ran towards the lost one now comes after the other lost son. The father does not let insult turn the father away. An angry complaint reveals the heart of the oldest son. Although he stayed at home, he did not stay at home as a son, rather as a slaver, a worker, and his father as one who gives out commands. Oh, yes, he has obeyed these commands, but not with the full heart of a son. He works with a calculating mind, waiting to be paid for the work that he does. And so he sees himself as underpaid, and his father so stingy. And so he lives with this smoldering resentment that has come to the surface and demands the attention of his father. Listen, he tells his father, and he goes category by category, that smoldering resentment. But these calculations are not part of the father's equation. From the father's point of view, the important thing is that they have always been together, father and son. And the father has held nothing back from him. At the beginning of the story, the father divided and shared all he had with both sons. But the older son did not focus on the presence and self-giving of the father. Instead, he has fabricated a demanding father who withholds love from the one who deserves it, while giving love to the one who does not deserve it. There's no equality here, no favoritism. This is the inner world that the older brother inhabits. And so, the older son's lack of joy makes him a lost son, like his brother, but with different motivation. He has chosen the identity of a hired hand, with all the resentments, all the angers that enforced employment would bring. If the older son had lived in the house of his father as a free and vibrant worker in the vineyard, he would now be dancing in celebration at the return of his brother. Celebration is just a natural overflow of divine love, the nature of God, who finds the lost and brings the dead back to life. And so, midway in these days of Lent, the revelation of God as grace should make us rejoice. But before we can celebrate, we must deal with the mindsets that the appearance of grace uncovers. Yes, we are attached to our past sins. We cannot quite believe we are sons and daughters of love. This keeps us from joy. And two, we are alienated from the simple presence of abundance. And so we work for our reward, and we find ourselves at times resentful, even envious. This too keeps us from joy. And so, only when we break the stranglehold of these two blocking mindsets will we hear the music in the house of the Father and know that we are home. And may God be with us always and in always. And may the Lord give you his peace and bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.